All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jim Taylor, and I am very, very pleased to welcome you to this very unique, exciting, and memorable event. Very grateful to the students and staff of R.S. McLaughlin School here in Oshawa, Ontario, to provide the support that is needed to put on something like this. I'd like to welcome not only the students here who are in the library, but also to welcome the students who have joined us from Fisher Park Summit School in Ottawa, Broadview Public School in Ottawa, and also Taylor Creek School in Scarborough. So thank you for joining us, and we appreciate your support on this project as well. Before I hand it over to our host, Maya, I just want to explain to you just how this will work. Maya is the facilitator, and she will be taking the questions from our students in each of the three schools. In addition, we'll be having a question live here from an RS McLaughlin students. As well, we have Bob Hoffman, who is in the Netherlands. And perhaps Bob, yeah, Bob, you are waving right on cue. And we'll be able to have Bob ask Mr. White a question directly as well. At this time, I would also like to thank the entire White family who have been able to arrange for Mr. White to come here today. We're very, very grateful for that. And for our students here who are assembled, this is an example of living history. And the stories that we're going to be able to hear today are important stories to be told. And it's an incredibly unique and important opportunity for you. So thank you very much for coming here today. Maya, I think we're ready to go. Over to you.
So just to reiterate, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maya Kirk, and I am a grade 11 student here at RS McLaughlin in Oshawa, Ontario. It is my pleasure to serve as your host for this remarkable event that will be taking place today. It is an honor to welcome Mr. Donald White to our school and this amazing video conference. Before we begin, I would like to remind our participating schools to have their microphones on mute, except when it is their turn to ask a question to Mr. White. I will be directing the questions and identifying the name of the school prior to each question being asked. We would ask our schools to be ready when it is their turn. Depending on our time, schools may have the chance to ask additional questions. Before we get started, our ECHOS 2020 team would like to thank RS McLaughlin for their wonderful support in hosting this event, as well as the Durham District School Board for providing technical support. If everyone is ready, let's get started. I would like to now welcome Mr. Bob Hoffman, who is in the ECHOS 2020 project leader, who will say a few words. Bob is joining us online from the Netherlands. Hello, Bob, and welcome to our video conference.
Hi all. Welcome as well to this video conference from the Netherlands. It's almost getting dark over here. It's past 6 p.m., so it's dinner time, but we put everything aside to be present and to live actually what you see behind me. The motto of the Global Teenager Project is to learn with the world and not just about the world. So this is an excellent example, and thank you very much, all of you who made this unique event possible. Over to you, Maya.
All right, thank you, Bob. Your leadership organizing the ECHOS 2020 project is greatly appreciated. I would like to now introduce our special guest, Mr. Donald White. So just a little backstory for everyone before we begin. At the age of 16, Donald White enlisted in the Ontario Regiment Militia as a part-time soldier in the summer of 1941. 2 years later, he enlisted in the army as a full-time soldier. In January of 1944, he was sent to England and then left for Italy, where he joined the Royal Canadian Dragoons. Mr. White was a trooper who was trained to serve in a reconnaissance squadron. In March of 1945, he traveled by landing craft tank from Leghorn, Italy to Marseilles, France. He later drove up through France to Belgium. While in Belgium, he helped to refit equipment and vehicles in order to be ready for the push through to the Netherlands. As part of the Canadian contingent of soldiers, Mr. White traveled through the Netherlands to the North Province of Friesland. Sorry if I mispronounce any of the names here. Once the North was liberated, orders were given to head to the port of Wilhelmshaven in Germany, where he was when the war was declared over. He stayed to help with the reparation of the Netherlands and left in January 1946 to return home. Please join me in welcoming Mr. White to RS McLaughlin. Mr. White, it is a pleasure and honor to have you at our school, and we look forward to hearing your story. Then it says, welcome to say something if you'd like. Sorry.
Well, it is certainly great to be here. I just hope I live up to the expectations that of my introduction here. I'll do my best anyway.
I'm sure it'll be amazing. All right, so we're good to get started. And our first question for Mr. White is from Broadview Public School in Ottawa and Kimberly Kennedy's grade 6 class. So we'll hand it to them. It is for Broadview.
Can you hear us? Go ahead and ask.
Hello, Mr. White. My name is Gabby. I was wondering how you feel about kids today learning about your experience.
Well, I think as time went on, I began to think more of what actually happened and what we actually did. And it is certainly gratifying for me that you students are interested in what happened, because basically we learn from history, and this is some history we're going through today. Thank you very much for the question.
All right, thank you, Broadview. The page. Our next question comes from Taylor Creek Public School in Scarborough, Ontario. Please go ahead with your question, Taylor Creek. It doesn't have it listed. There's the microphone again.
Hello, Mr. White.
Hi.
Hello, Mr. White. Our names are Alexis and
Tajid.
we would like to ask you,
What do you remember, and how were you feeling about the trip across the Atlantic as you were heading to war?
Well, I guess I had mixed feelings about it. I was probably glad that I was going, because that was when I joined up, I wanted to go overseas and help out. I think maybe the other feeling you had was I'm leaving home and I don't know when I'll be, pardon me, be back. So maybe I was feeling a little melancholy as well as kind of excited about going.
All right, thank you, Taylor Creek. That was a wonderful question. Our next question comes from Fisher Park Summit Alternative School in Ottawa and Sharon Cooper's grade 7 class. You're ready to go with your question.
My name is Nina. Hi, my name is Nina, and my question is, we know that you were 16 at the time you enlisted as a part-time soldier. Were you able to continue your education, and how did soldiers deal with the disruption with their education?
Well, you weren't supposed to enlist until you were 18, and I knew if I went in the full-time military, my mother would get me out because she'd tell my true age. So she let me stay in as a part-time soldier, which meant I did promise her that I would finish my junior matriculation in those days. And as soon as I did, I joined the regular army.
Thank you, Fisher Park Summit. That was another great question for Mr. White. Our next question comes from right here in RS McLaughlin. So we'll have a student, Dana, ask the question. There's the microphone. Just close to your face.
Were you awarded any medals or citations?
Well, I wouldn't put it down as awarded. No, I wasn't. The medals I have our campaign medals, and there's one for the different campaigns I was in. They're the stars, and the other one is a volunteer medal, and the other is the war medal. On my right side is the medals that the country of the Netherlands awarded all Canadian soldiers that served over there, and then 2 of the towns awarded me medals too.
All right, so before we get to our next student question, I would like to ask Bob Hoffman, who is in the Netherlands, to ask our next question. Are you ready, Bob?
I'm ready for it.
All right, ready when you are.
So my question for you is, during your time overseas in Europe and in the Netherlands, did you make any friends during the war?
Well, during the war, maybe no, I didn't really, because being a reconnaissance, we were on the move and we weren't in any one place for any length of time. After the war, yes, I made several friends in the Netherlands, where we were billeted in Stadskanaal and we're in Amsterdam, the 2 main places.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we are ready to go back through the schools in a second turn. So if Broadview is ready, they can ask their second question.
Hello, Mr. White. My name is Jack. I was wondering if you have a first thought or feeling on the mentions of World War II.
I didn't quite understand the question.
Do you have any first thoughts or feelings on the mention of World War II?
Yeah, I don't know whether I have time enough to tell you all the thoughts you have. Some of the thoughts are, I think the very first one that comes to mind is, I often wish that we could have gotten there sooner and liberated the different people in the different countries there. But it wasn't to be, but that is one of my thoughts. The other thought is that sometimes, I don't know how to express it, but that I have a good feeling that I was able to do what I did do.
All right, so if Taylor Creek is ready, they can ask their second question now.
Hello, Mr. White. Our names are
Samira
and Masuda. We'd like to ask you,
what was going through your head throughout all of the chaos?
what gave you hope throughout this experience?
I couldn't quite catch that one.
What was going through your head throughout all of the chaos, and
what gave you hope throughout this experience?
Well, it's going to be hard to answer that question, but you didn't really have a lot of thoughts going through your head, because when you were in action, you had a job to do. And it would be like saying playing a football game. You just did things automatic and you went and didn't really think about what was going on except what you had to do at that particular time.
Thank you again, Taylor Creek. So now we move on to the Fisher Park Summit Alternative School and their second question.
Hi, my name is James, and my question is, well, my great grandfather was in the war, and his name was James Allen Roberts, and I was wondering if you ever knew him.
No, there was somewhere around 1 million Canadians in the war, and you might narrow it down if you could tell me the regiment he was in.
The Manitoba Dragoons.
Well, they were kind of a sister regiment to ours. There was 2 Recce regiment, and the Manitoba Dragoons was one of them, and the RCDs were the other one. But unfortunately, we never got together.
Okay.
Okay, that was a very cool question. All right, so then we move back to the student question in RS McLaughlin. This one will be asked by Aisha.
Hi, so my question's about how did your family and loved ones react to you going to the war?
Well, I basically wasn't home to really know, but I gathered information, and I always felt sorry for my father because my mother did not take me being in the Army very well, and I know he had to put up with an awful lot. So I always admire my dad immensely.
Thank you. All right, so if Bob is ready, then he can ask his second question.
There's one more question, maybe a bit from a different perspective. As you might know, the project we're working in is called Echoes 2020. And we have three perspectives. One is the past, when students do research to what happened in the Second World War. The second perspective is to work about the present, the here and now. And the last part of the project that will start in 4 weeks is about the future. Now, I was born in 1955, so I'm from a post-war generation. It's my big wish that my children and my grandchildren also will be and stay from a post-war generation. The liberation that you and your fellow countrymen gave us, how is your view about what can we do to keep us away from a war in a present day and time, day and age?
You sure asked a loaded question. If I had the real answer to it, I would probably be the most remarkable person on earth. But I think the biggest thing we have in society general, in the past and in the present and in the future, is somehow or other, we don't tend to respect the other person's view. I think if we all step back and took a reasonable attitude towards the other people, the other nations, the other countries, maybe we could get along a little better. But we seem to be, what I think is the gospel. No, not necessarily. And I think we just got to learn to respect each other and the different countries and their different ways, and try to learn why they're like that. And in so doing, maybe we'll change a little too.
Are we good for a third cycle of questions? All right, so if Broadview is ready, then we are good to go for a third cycle of questions.
Hi, Mr. White. My name is Michael. Do you have any photos or artifacts from World War II?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I've even brought some here today. But yes, we have quite a few, and I've given quite a few away. I'm going to tell a little story. And I'm saying we, and I didn't do this by myself. And it always bothers me when I'm here like this. I'm the only person here, and I'd love to have 2 or 3 of my buddies with me. But we liberated a concentration camp in the Netherlands called Westerbork. And Westerbork was a gathering place for mainly the Jews and some gypsies and that. And when they got a train load, they shipped them off to the extermination camps in Poland and Germany. Well, we were liberated early one morning, and there was one of the inmates in there gave me 2 currencies that were paper currencies that they used in that camp. I brought them home, and one is down in the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., and the other one is in Petawawa with my regiment. So that was one little souvenir I got from the war that I brought home. I have a belt and a bayonet and a pistol. They're all in the museum here, in military museum here in Oshawa. Yes, so I brought some home. Yep.
All right, thank you so much for that question. And we are ready for our third question from the Taylor Creek School.
Hi, Mr. White. My name is Amina.
And my name is Lean, and we'd like to ask you, if World War II was a story, what would be the moral of the story?
These are some tough questions. The moral of the story, I guess, is the fact that I think what causes most of the conflicts in the world today is greed. And certainly that was the problem in the Second World War, because Hitler was greedy, and there comes a time and place when maybe we just can't put up with any more of it. And thank goodness we did, and we stepped in when we did, and thank goodness for the end results.
Thank you. And we're ready for the third question from Fisher Park Summit.
Hello, Mr. White. My name is Isla. And my name is Dia. And our questions today are, so what were the living quarters and climate like during the war? And what were some typical tasks that you would do during the day?
Well, it depends. Once I was through basic training and got with the regiment and we were in action, then actually I had one of the very first mobile homes there ever was, and it was called a Staghound. And that was an armored car. It was a 5-man armored car. Everything I owned was in that. We lived in it 24 hours a day, you might say. And typical routine for us was in Italy, we had to give them up sometimes because the weather and it bogged down and we could not operate. So we went in and acted as infantry. When you're in infantry, mainly you try to find a place like a barn or a shed or something that you can hunker down in. But sometimes that didn't happen, so you're just out in the open. If it rained, and no place to get out of the weather sometimes. And sometimes it'd take 2 or 3 days for your uniform to dry because you had nowhere to go or anything. In the vehicle, our accommodation was at night we'd come in and put a little tarp against the vehicle and hunker down underneath that. Duty was you got up in the morning and you started your vehicle up and you pulled in there, our radio sets to the frequency of the day, grab a bite to eat and head out just as dawn was coming up and go all day. And you'd go to rendezvous point at night just before dark, and then you had your vehicles to gas up and munition to load up and get a bite to eat and maybe get a wash, get a few hours sleep because you had to get up to do guard duty as well as trying to get a little sleep. So it was kind of tough, but you got toughened up to it and you got used to it. And the big thing was about I would say about 2 to 3 weeks, you could only take it so long, and then you'd pull you back for a couple of days. So you had a couple of days to kind of recoup before you went back in.
Thank you. And now for our third student question from McLaughlin will be asked by Roxana.
Hi. My question is, when traveling place to place and like meeting different foreign soldiers, were there any customs that they had that surprised you?
Well, in Italy, the Canadians were attached to the British 8th Army, and the British 8th Army was made up of soldiers from pretty well most of the Commonwealth. And yes, I learned quite a little bit. I had actually access to 3 Indian regiments, 1 Gurkha, 1 Punjabi, and 1 Gurkhas. And I always marveled at their British officers because they knew their soldiers. And in my mind, I still remember this today, to discipline a soldier, he would not be allowed to go on guard duty. Well, if that was the case in the Canadians, I don't think we'd have anybody on guard.
All right, so I believe we'll move to a fourth cycle of questions now. So that brings us back to Broadview.
Hello, Mr. White. My name is Jackson. Do you think the movies are similar to what actually happened in World War II?
I don't watch many war movies, and the ones I have, they're factual to a degree, but they're embellished quite a little bit, and therefore, when you watch it, you just want to kind of take it as a movie and not as all of it as facts.
All right, thank you, Broadview. We move to Taylor Creek again.
Hello, Mr. White. Our names are Samantha
and Alexis.
And we'd like to ask you,
after the war, what were some things that you viewed differently or had a different perspective on?
I think the biggest thing was I appreciated what our country was and what I had here and the comforts of the country. I think I try not to complain because I've got nothing to complain about, and most people in this country don't have anything to complain about. And I think if we'd quit that and take the positive, that everybody would be better off.
All right, so we now move to Fisher Park Summit for their fourth question.
I was wondering if the soldiers were getting paid or if they're like the money was getting sent to their families.
Well, we had options here. Our pay was $1. When I went overseas, we got danger pay and bumped up from $1.20. I got $1.30 a day. It went into a account, and once a month you could go on pay parade and draw whatever you wanted out that you had saved up. You could buy victory bonds to help the war effort, or you could send some home. So it all depends on the individual, what you wanted to do with the money you earned.
All right, so for our R.S. McLaughlin question, I believe we circle back to Dana.
When you were on leave for those 2 or 3 days, do you remember any leisure activities or fun things you used to do?
We used to do a lot of nothing, but then there was always, we had laundry to do, and we'd do a little bit of sleeping, and we always had some work to do, but mainly it was just rest, so we didn't do a lot. And it was only back, we were behind the front lines, but you were still within range of the artillery fire. So sometimes you would never get a shell fired, and sometimes you'd have shells fired several times a day. But you weren't in the direct line of the artillery fire, so it meant that you could relax, and that was the main thing, because if you don't relax, you get all uptight, and then that's when what we call going bomb-lacky or shell shock.
Thank you. So now we have another question from Bob, his fourth question.
My question again is looking a bit forward. As you might know, the ECHOS project is about 12 weeks where students from 26 twins are working together. So a Dutch school and a Canadian school are one twin. We have 26 from Ontario, Quebec, New Brunswick. And at some moment we try to capture everything that's being done and produced by the students. So my question to you is, and maybe it will be a very short answer, but when the project is done and we will capture all the work of the students, the things that they learned, their lesson learned, we're going to publish, to create a publication, to capture all the ideas, the answers, the findings. Would you be willing at the end of the project, in a place to set, to accept as a present for your being present here, the result of the project, so we can share the findings of the students at the end of the project with you?
I would be delighted. I would be honored, and I thank you very much for thinking of me.
Right.
one more thing, Maya, if I may.
Of course, sorry.
Yeah, it's not as much as a question, but it's still trying to express my gratitude for all the students in the Netherlands and also the students in Canada. It's so easy to simply teach history from a lesson book. And in terms of second-hand knowledge from books or movies. And I really would like to express my gratitude not only to you for being a wonderful host of this video conferences, but also to Mr. Jim Taylor, who organized this video conference, to the school in McLaughlin School in Oshawa for hosting us, and also to Ms. Anita Townsend, who is the coordinator in Canada for the Global Teenager Project. So many people with different roles and different responsibilities trying to actually create a lesson for life, and the fact that you are willing to share your answers in such an honest way is, I regard it as a big gift. So from this side of the pond, a big thank you for sharing all your experiences and sharing your answers. Thank you very much.
I'm so grateful I'm able to do that.
All right, so at this point in the interview, we're going to take a quick break from questions and we're going to display some images for everyone to see. So this is the first image we have to show.
That's the vehicle I was in, called the Staghound, which I've talked about. And that picture was taken in April the 15th, 1945, when we were in the town of Leeuwarden. We just liberated the town.
All right, and for our second image.
I don't know why, and it bothers me because it seems to be all on me, and I was only one of a multitude of Canadian soldiers that did more than I ever did. But that picture is the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Mark Rutte, and he's presenting me with a bouquet of flowers, and he also had a box of tulip bulbs. And those tulips are the Don White tulips. He named a tulip after me. Is that a picture of Staghound again? Is it? Yeah, well, that's the another Staghound that was in Leeuwarden the day we liberated.
All right, so after the questions and the pictures, we'll be bringing the interview to a close. On behalf of everyone who is involved at every stage of making this project come together and work, we offer a gigantic thank you to everyone. And of course, to Mr. Don White for coming in and for talking to us. We owe you so much gratitude. And Mr. Bob Hoffman has already reiterated such a great how gratitude we all are. And we have a present to offer you on behalf of everyone who's involved. This is for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Am I supposed to look at it?
Absolutely.
Yes, it's a gift from everyone at RS McLaughlin to you for coming in and taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us.
Oh, wonderful. Memorabilia of the school. I'll cherish it. I cherish it and we'll keep it. I cherish it and keep it, and thank you very much. And I find it hard to express really my feelings that of being able to be here with you today, and I do hope that what I've told you is from my heart, and it's I try not to embellished because war is not funny. It's not pleasurable, and it's really, really hard to describe what you go through because you have your ups and downs. And I was one of the lucky ones that I could try to keep myself buoyed up because some of the boys got down and it wasn't nice.
Thank you again and again. A huge thank you from everyone involved. So we'll pass off once again.
I think this is one of those moments in our lives when we realize that we've just been part of something quite extraordinary. And it has been said, Don, we are so grateful for your presence here. You are a gift. And I know that you've got some travel plans coming up, apparently 2 trips to the Netherlands. We want to wish you all of the best on that trip. And I also want to echo what Bob has said about the Echoes 2020 project and the idea of how do we take this forward. And so the students who are here at RS McLaughlin and those students in our locations across Ontario, it really is up to you to take it forward and to be able to think about what Don has said today and apply that to your own lives, to your school, to your community. So on behalf of the entire Echoes 2020 team, thank you, Don. Thank you, Maya. Fantastic job. And everybody should give a big round of applause to Tyler, the tech guy, because everything worked technology-wise. So Tyler, thank you very much. And as I said, we have just been part of something very, very special, something very unique. And I think we all express our gratitude for being here today. So we're signing off here from Oshawa, Ontario. Thank you, Broadview. Thank you, Fisher Park Summit. Thank you, Taylor Creek. Thank you, Bob in the Netherlands. Our best to Manon as well, and all our friends there. And I know that we're grateful for you and the leadership you've shown in the development of this project. And this is why we do it. So signing off from Oshawa, Ontario.